So I can't draw like on the man.
Well, I mean, you can draw on the man if you really
I want to draw.
if you really want to, I guess. All right.
Yeah.
So Alton,
I'm gonna do it.
oh geez. Okay. Well, hold on. Let's let's set the stage first. All right. Alton, welcome back. It's good to have you here in episode 2. What's this podcast?
This one is about the Voynich code.
The Voynich Manuscript. Okay.
Manuscript, yes.
Well, everybody who is tuning in for a second time, amazing, first of all. And second of all, welcome to the Unresolved podcast, a podcast that exists so that Alton can be on a podcast.
And draw on man's faces.
So I think, at the end of the episode, last time, not yesterday, obviously, it was quite a while ago.
Yes.
We said that we were going to talk about the Voynich Manuscript.
Yes.
And so we'll get into that here very briefly. But I felt like before we get into the Voynich manuscript, and of course we do have a picture of Wilfred Voynich here.
Yes, he's a very handsome chap.
Accidentally use them interchangeably, I'm sure. But before we continue there, I thought it might be a little bit fun to take a look at something else that you suggested that we look at last time.
Oh, what did I suggest?
Yeah, what did you suggest?
Oh no, I don't like this.
It's a great question. So now here, what you're seeing something is actually fairly interesting, and I thought, after the last podcast, where you suggested that we should actually take a look at the Norwich manuscript. I thought I would do a little bit of research and see if there was a Norwich manuscript, and surprisingly, it turns out there is. So, what I have for you here, you can see this is I've got this rendition, if you will, this art from St. Julian of Norwich, right? It turns out that St. Julian of Norwich, she was on her she was very, very ill when she was about 30 years old or so.
Oh no.
Yeah, and lived in the in the 1300s, 1400s. Anyway, she was very ill. She had about I think it was around 16 visions or so, and spent the next 30 years or so of her life decoding those. And
wow.
And so they're actually, as you can see here, here's a photocopy of or a picture of one of the pages of the long text of the Norwich manuscript. That actually has a name. It's not technically the Norwich manuscript, but I think
it's close enough.
Yeah, exactly. I think for our purposes it will be. But I thought it was an interesting thing to take a look at. It actually does have historical significance. It's actually the first English language manuscript known to be written by a woman. So actually has a good amount of historical significance. But I also thought that this would be a fun exercise here. So I clipped this from a website that had a translation of the kind of Old English that she would have written in. Yeah. And that's present in the manuscript.
Can I read it?
Yes,
I kind of want to read it.
Well, this is exactly what I was hoping you might want to do for us is to go ahead and read this. So without further ado, that first paragraph, I was wondering if you could indulge us.
I will gladly do that. Expect Leonardo DiCaprio style acting. Great.
Okay.
And fro the time that it shall weed, I desire oftentimes I write what was our Lord's meaning. In 15 years, I wanna. She just uses thing.
Yeah. Yes, actually. I mean, it is technically English. It's just very old English, and so words were a little bit different, and the way that things were said were a little bit different. But
would it really? Love was his meaning.
I was amazed that they were able to translate a word like shawidi, which.
You almost made me choke. Wait, do you see what I wrote? Oh, you do?
Oh, I do. Yes, I do. And the audience probably will too. So getting back to the topic du jour, which is
Yes.
the Voynich manuscript. This is of course is an actual photograph of Voynich, Wilfrid Voynich himself, like that.
Yeah.
And, I know that you have read at least part of the Wikipedia article on this, and so I was wondering if
Yes.
you might like to introduce what the manuscript is.
Okay. So in some time, late 1800s.
Where are we going? Are we going with the Wilfrid himself? Or are we going
Wilfrid.
with the... Oh, okay.
I
yeah,
wanna. I mean,
See,
look at him. He's on the first slide.
he is on the first slide. That's true, and we should maybe talk about a little bit about who he is. This manuscript is attributed to him. He was. It was in the 1800s that he was. He was born. Actually, in 1865.
Oh yes.
In Lithuania, actually. So,
Lithuania.
right,
Yes,
yeah.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
He was a protagonist. No, not a protagonist. He was a protester.
Well, he
against
was
against someone. Big
Yeah.
baddie.
So he was actually he was a Polish revolutionary, but he was also an antiquarian. So somebody who studies the antiques. And a bibliophile, so somebody who is really into books.
Yeah.
So what else do you know about him?
He led a life of danger and adventure. So people said.
That is, I would say that's actually that is actually an accurate description. He,
Give him a little Indiana Jones hat.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate for our Wilfrid. That's a nice drawing there. He joined the revolutionary organization Proletariat. He was actually arrested by Russian police in 1887, trying to free one of his fellow co-conspirators from jail. He ended up in jail himself. But in true adventurer fashion, he actually did escape the jail and ended up in London of all places. So
give him let me give him a baguette now.
A baguette.
Baguette.
I think you're confusing England with France. But
Well, they also have baguettes and
they certainly eat them.
yeah, but
So what else do you know about him?
He led a life of danger. He also had a bookshop, and with this bookshop, he got old manuscripts and other things. And one thing he was known for is actually he sold a fake diorama.
Oh, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of that.
He sold something fake.
Do you know what a diorama is?
I'm pretty sure he sold a fake one off of an artist. That's what I read.
That's fascinating. Yeah, no, I didn't know that.
No?
So, well, you learn something every day. So let's move on to this manuscript and what and his involvement in it. Do you remember anything about that from what you read in Wikipedia?
He found it in La Casa de something.
What happened was there was at what point in history Italy annexed the Papal States. That's where the Vatican and the Catholic Church is headquartered, and they started confiscating the church's libraries. And so, but they had this interesting rule that essentially was that if manuscripts or works were part of an individual person's library, they wouldn't confiscate it. And so at that time, the church distributed a lot of works to individual libraries. Anyway, fast forward to early 1900s.
Wow.
Right.
Yes.
And the church is in need of some money, right? And so they decided to sell some things. And so Voynich goes and he buys a bunch of boxes of books, and this manuscript was apparently within that box of books.
Yes,
so,
I do remember that it was in a box of books, and in this box he had it was very thick. Mm-hmm. It was how big? I'd say it's about that tall.
Mm-hmm.
It was let me show for the camera. It was probably about the size of my head, like that.
Yeah. So here, you can see what we've got here is a. This is actually, wow. Yes. So this is a. Yeah. I know we're taking a long time to really build up into what is the content, what is the mystery and the contents behind this.
Okay.
But so we'll try and get the pace going.
Yeah. Let's go.
This is actually the front cover.
Yeah.
As you put, wow, very exciting.
Yeah.
Very exciting front cover. It is made of calfskin vellum, which they don't.
Sad.
Yeah, they don't really do that these days. But it.
Yeah, some very angry people would come after the manufacturers.
Well, yeah. So it's made of calfskin. Anyway, this is the front cover. Not terribly exciting. This is.
I added wow. So.
Yeah, you did add wow. Actually, that's yeah. An example of one of the pages. This, of course, is courtesy of the current owner of the manuscript, which is Yale University. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
And so interesting. Does it look? I mean, looks like any kind of old.
Plant book.
Old plant book. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll believe that. So the interesting thing in the whole mystery surrounding this manuscript that that Voynich came upon is that nobody knows how to read it. Right? There's a lot of, as you can see here, there's a lot of script that doesn't doesn't necessarily look all stylistically different than the Norwich manuscript, but still it doesn't look all that dissimilar. There's a lot of sketches and things like that. However, the characters don't match any known character set, right? And so people, including Voynich, have tried to figure out what this is. He comes across something, this book that has been in this box for presumably ages. And
it does look quite old, and we'll get to it.
It does, and it's an interesting book because it is like we said, it's made of vellum, right? And it's about 240 pages. There's a lot, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's a long
for something like vellum. You need a lot of it.
It turns out, it's something around the order of 14 to 15 calfskins.
Wow.
So yes, absolutely. You need a lot.
You need a lot of calves.
Exactly. You need a lot of calves to be able to write this down. Also interesting, there appear to be no real mistakes in it, right? So, which of course has led some to hypothesize this is just a copy of something else, but it is interesting that there don't appear to be any corrections and things of that nature. One
other thing that I'd like to point out is you might see these green pools if you guys ever go out and look for through most of other parts of the manuscript. But these green pools were actually a way of curing disease. I forgot what it was called, but it was a certain way to cure disease. With these green pools, and there were often a lot of people in them at once.
Yeah, so actually, that's a great segue. There are actually people who have studied this manuscript. They split it into 6 different sections. Right, there's an herbal section. We saw a picture of that just moments ago. And then there's the astronomical, which I have an example of here afterwards. Balneological. That is, I think, what you were, what you're talking about with respect to pools healing. Right.
Yeah.
It's actually, they don't actually heal. It was just a belief at the time that that you could heal through
similar to leeching
through
where
bathing.
It was thought that it would cure something.
Yeah.
If you've seen what is it called? Stand By Me, you'll know.
Yeah.
It is not a good thing.
Okay.
No one likes leeches.
Yeah, actually, that's a classic scene. Actually, yeah. Cosmological. Of course, the origin and development of the universe, pharmaceutical, and then recipes. The recipes section is particularly interesting. I don't think I have an example
just
of
like
it,
your your grandma's lasagna recipe, or is it?
Interesting. Yeah. Honestly, it's very possible that you might have just solved this, and it is in fact just your mother's lasagna. Actually, we don't unfortunately, because we can't read it, we don't actually know.
If only we could have
If only
Mr. whoever wrote this, or Miss whoever. If only we could have their precious recipes. Yeah.
Exactly. So, we've seen a little bit about this, and we know that Voynich came to have it at some point.
Yeah. He's looking down at the manuscript currently.
And I think we mentioned it's that's nice right there. We eventually know that it came into the possession of Yale Library through donations. So I thought it'd be interesting to really quickly go through the history before Voynich, or at least what we know or theorize about it, and then we'll talk about some of the theories as to who might have done this. Do you remember a whole lot about what happened? How he before any of the speculation on
some king or someone big in Germany had it at some point.
Interesting.
Correct?
Okay, so here let's see if I can bring up.
What is that abomination?
So this is.
You are not telling me that is a man, right, Dad? This is not the man.
This is Rudolph II, Holy Roman Emperor.
Did he look like a thing of plants? Did he look like a horror movie character?
So so this is believe it or not, this is an actual portrait of Rudolph II, and it was actually done when he was still living, and it is said that it is one of his favorite portraits that were done of him.
I can't really imagine him waking up in his bed and seeing that and being too happy.
This is a more conventional portrait of Rudolph, Holy Roman Emperor. He was very very much into botany, but also into old books and things like that.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. So so we do believe that. We don't necessarily believe, but as the story goes, Rudolph II was in possession of this manuscript at one point. It was well known that he very much into obscure texts and things like that, and so according to a letter that was found within the Voynich manuscript, that they theorized that it was in his possession. So whether or not it was or not, it's actually unclear. What we think we know about it from some history and from this letter that was found within the supposedly found within the manuscript itself by Voynich. Okay, was that that essentially the first more or less known owner, where there is some sort of record, and that record basically consists of this letter, is this guy named George Baresh. He was.
Do we have a photo of Mr. Baresh?
I don't. You have to consider that he was 17th century alchemist, and so that's 1600s, and so
What about a portrait? Do we have a portrait?
No, I don't. I wish I did.
Is he made of fruits this time?
Is he made of fruits? No, but he was an alchemist. He was, but he came into possession of the book and couldn't decipher it himself. And there was this well-known Jesuit scholar, at the time, and I should say this is in the 1600s or so, right? And named Athanasius Kircher. He's this guy that claimed to have deciphered the hieroglyphs, and it turns out he didn't. But anyway, at the time, he was thought to be, this great decipherer of codes and languages and things like that. Anyway, Baresh sent some copies of some of the pages to him, asking if he could decipher it. Of course, Kircher, being the guy that he was like, no, I want the book. I don't want the, I don't want the copies. I want the book. And Baresh refused. Probably thinking that, I've got something of value here. I'm not just going to send it to this guy that has a reputation for deciphering things. Anyway, interestingly though, of course, in 1662, Baresh promptly dies.
Oh.
After which all of his stuff goes to his friend Jan Marek Marcy, who's this rector at the Charles University in Prague. Anyway, what does Marcy do? He turns around, writes this letter to Kircher and sends him this manuscript anyway. So Baresh wanted to keep it from him, but it ends up in Marcy either way.
Was he already working for him all along?
Yeah.
Was this his fatal plan?
Great question. Yeah. So anyway, it supposedly goes to gets to Kircher, and then supposedly all of Kircher's belongings or manuscripts and things like that are just kind of kept by the church until at some point it's later found and purchased by Voynich. Interestingly, the letter in this that was found in the manuscript said that it was sold to Rudolph II, our friend here, the fruit emperor.
Well, he was actually made out of veggies.
Thank you. Actually, thanks for the correction. Was acquired it for 2 kilograms of gold. So I'm curious, Alton, for you to, how much do you think that 2 kilograms of gold is worth in today's dollars?
That's gold.
That is okay. That's
gold. Okay. In today's dollars. Kilograms is how much equal to pounds?
There are 2.205 pounds in a kilogram. So this is about just shy of 4.5 pounds.
10 million.
$10 million. Okay, that's an interesting guess. It's actually only $120,000.
No.
Which to be clear, that's a lot of money we're talking about. But compared to 10 millions, that's I think it's fair to say.
How? That's so many. That's 4 pounds of gold.
Well, it is in the end an undecipherable book written on calfskin. So, I don't know. Everything's got its value.
Imagine how many Rolexes you can make with 4 pounds of gold.
I wouldn't even have a clue. In fairness, that is 2 kilograms of gold today. Scarcity back then, who knows? Maybe it was worth more. Maybe it was worth less. I don't really know. Anyway, so that's so that's kind of the history of it. We know that it's a little bit of a weird thing, and so I thought we'd talk a little bit about some of the theories here. And do you remember any of those? Do you remember any of the theories as to where this comes from?
This whole story was made up by Mr. Voynich, and he and his wife and his wife's father made it because his wife's father was a decipher.
Okay, I think you're going a little off script from the actual mainstream theories here.
Oh,
there are plenty of theories that say that Voynich himself was responsible for this manuscript as a hoax.
Yeah.
The letter interestingly says that Roger Bacon. They thought Roger Bacon wrote it. Well, yes, but he was this. Essentially a scholar, if you will, Franciscan scholar, I think, anyway, from the 13th century, so the 1200s. But the price of an unknown Bacon manuscript.
Manuscript.
I can see that you're very pleased by this. The amount of money that Voynich could have gotten from an previously unknown Bacon manuscript would be huge, right? So they thought it could be that. I added a little bit of color to you because Voynich himself was an interesting guy beyond being a revolutionary. He married a woman. Her name was Ethel Lillian Boole, who herself was actually a former Irish revolutionary. But she was author of what turned out to be a very, very popular novel called The Gadfly. So she was a this book was hugely popular in Russia, actually, but a very important work, and very important and a very important individual, Ethel Boole, behind it. But her father was also interesting in the context of this. His name was George Boole, and he is in mathematics and computer science and disciplines such as that.
Very
He's known
smart
as,
man.
yes, and the father of Boolean logic, right? Which is something that you'll learn later in life. But I thought it was an interesting thing because you have this antiquarian, Voynich, who's a bibliophile who has all these rare manuscripts and knows what something very old should look like and how it and how it should come across. And you have this very, very talented writer, Ethel, and his wife, who comes from somebody who is very very much logic centered, the kind of person who would be good with ciphers and things of that nature. And so it kind of comes all together into this neat package potentially of hoax. But unfortunately, we're pretty sure that Voynich did not, in fact, he did not, in fact, make this. There was actually some radiocarbon dating done on the manuscript that actually puts it, that ages the vellum that was used around the early 1400s. And they took samples across, and so they were all very, very consistent. So either he would have had to have come across about 14 calfskins worth of unused vellum,
which is
right,
probably very hard back then.
Yeah, or erased, but they've done some spectral analysis, and it doesn't appear to have been erased. Interestingly, actually, that spectral analysis also shows that the inks used were consistent with the early 1400s. So we can probably say that wasn't the case. Also this nice, neat package. That is a very neat package.
Yeah.
Another potential theory here is that the whole thing was actually a hoax for Kircher. Kircher, remember, is the guy who was well known to be, or supposedly infamous for deciphering the hieroglyphs and things like that. And it turns out he's a bit of a charlatan in some regards. Not entirely, but
I bet he did decipher some things, maybe not the hieroglyphs.
He did. There was another hoax that I guess was played on him, and he did decipher that supposedly. And so this was, and so it was apparently maybe a common, like early days of trolling. So there's one theory that this was just a big troll for Kircher. Then of course there's Rudolph, your friend, who you're still mostly focused on drawing. Our vegetable emperor. He spent a lot of money on rare books and actually was died owing money to a lot of people, and so there are some people who just think it was a hoax in order to get those 2 kilograms of gold.
That mean old troll.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I mean, like the inks and the vellum and everything like that are relatively expensive, and so it's not a small buy-in to try.
No, it is definitely not. I mean, it would make sense if Rudolph did, because he seemed that if he had 2 kilograms of gold, he could probably find 14.
He could fund
unused.
He could certainly fund it, but anyway, so then of course there's the all these ideas that it's some sort of, that it's a real thing. It's like an enciphered real language or a made up language or something like that. Obviously, like the whole Roger Bacon thing doesn't really fit because he lived too early. He lived in the 13th century, so the 1200s, which is 200 years before this is known to have existed because of the carbon dating. There is this guy Jacobus who was actually the imperial distiller for Rudolph II, and there were some theories that because it was common for apothecaries to encode their recipes and things like that.
Can't get grandma's
well,
lasagna recipe out.
Exactly. At the time, it turns out the church was very much against that sort of thing. Possibly lasagna as well. I couldn't tell you. I think actually pasta might have been a later invention, but maybe not. It's maybe for
maybe it was
future food episode.
Yeah.
So probably not that again. Now, interestingly though, one theory that I thought was pretty good here, and I'm going to.
Does it involve aliens?
Does it involve aliens?
Every single mystery has to have a theory that involves aliens. Am I right?
I think that the alien,
what kind of meat grinder
the alien.
That thing looks like it would grind our sausage pretty good.
Yeah, nice tie-in. I appreciate that. This is an illustration taken from a manuscript by this guy Giovanni Fontana. Anyway, there are some who believe that this Giovanni was actually responsible for it, and you can and for a few reasons, not the least of which is if you take a look at this drawing, it's crude and in a way that's very similar to a lot of the drawings that were in the Voynich manuscript. Potentially maybe a little bit more precise in some areas, but anyway, that's that.
I mean, you do see his arrows and his nails and these straight lines of rope. Definitely plays a part.
Yeah. But he was also known to be a big fan of ciphers, and actually some of his works were using ciphers. But everybody who's taken a look at this, not everybody, but most people who've taken a look at this would probably agree that this cipher or whatever encoding or language or whatever that was used to write this is far more advanced than anything that
because it still is unsolved by some of the best ciphers in the world.
Yeah, interestingly about that, I'll show this. This is, there was, there was actually this is a copy of the proceedings from a seminar held by the National Security Agency. There are a lot of analysts and people who are interested in simply just kind of honing those skills. Anyway, it's released through the Freedom of Information Act. But yeah, a lot of scholars have taken a look at that. Not the least of which are some people who are very talented in cryptography who have taken a look at that. Interesting read that, although it's a bit outdated because it was prior to the radiocarbon dating. So anyway, there's that. I thought this was an interesting one.
Yeah.
And the final kind of big category, if you will, is that it's not a hoax.
No.
And it's not strictly real, but it's really just the crazy fever dream ramblings of a mad person, right? Somebody. I
mean, it does. Like, if you guys ever look at the drawings, it does look like a fever dream.
Well, if we think back to Julian of Norwich, right, and she has these visions, when she's ostensibly on her deathbed, although she of course survived for a good 30 years or more later. When people are something's going on, they're sick, fevers, things like that, they you can tend to be a little bit out of it and
a little goofy.
Yeah. So it could really just be that. We don't really know.
Maybe Norwich was behind it all.
Yeah. She would have had to have lived a little longer than she did, but it would have been a fantastic way to end this podcast, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, today, to this date, it remains unsolved. It's a very, very fascinating little piece of work.
Yeah. To this day, unresolved.
To this day, unresolved. Yes, it does remain that.
Bye 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 bye.